Hi, I'm Valerie. Thanks for joining my course today. I'm a certified project manager with over 10 years of experience managing projects anywhere from something small, such as a workflow application, to something large, such as a multi-million-dollar website redesign. I work on projects in all different spaces, including technology, finance, media and entertainment, real estate, travel, food, and many different areas. I have the PMP certification and the PMI ACP certification, both through the Project Management Institute. I would say that my top strengths as a project manager are organization, process improvement, communication, and relationship building. Today, our course is going to cover my top 4 tips for taking a PMI certification exam. The PMI certification exams are similar in nature that once you have some tips and some study techniques and some ways of going about the exam, you can use those same tips and techniques to take other exams. So the good news is these tips that I have today can work on almost any PMI exam that you're taking. So let's get into it. Tip number 1 is to know the material. PMI is very by the book. And so you will definitely need to know the material in the books. And depending on which certification exam you're taking, the books, of course, will change. So you'll need to know exactly which books have the information and the materials you need. So for example, when I took the PMI ACP exam, this is the book that I used. And I also had 3 other books. So knowing the material in the book that I just showed and the other books was key. I would say to know the material from beginning to end, inside out, upside down. You really need to know it because, again, PMI is very by the book. So that takes us to tip number 2, which is applying the material. When you take these PMI certification exams, there's more than just knowing the material, there's also applying it. So the way that PMI will phrase the questions and the answers will require you to, like I said in tip number 1, know the material, but also apply it to the way the question is being asked or the certain variables that they've put into the question. So knowing the material and then applying it to answer the question are key. And keep in mind, sometimes you need a second step of application. So it will be applying what you know, but then also taking it yet again to another space to really answer the question. So these questions can be multiple steps. So really just start with the material that you know, which was also tip number 1, applying it, and then also keep in mind you may need to apply yet another layer to answer the question. So that goes into tip number 3, which is reading the question carefully. PMI loves to ask questions that have information that is not relevant. It doesn't even matter. And so if you're reading the question, keep in mind, not all of it may actually be relevant. What you really need to focus on is what is the question here? It could be a paragraph long, but there's only one sentence in there which contains the actual question they're asking. Or it could be a combination of everything, and finding the question is key. So read the question first, then reread it and find what is the actual question they're asking. So this is key. And if you feel like these questions are tricky, you're right, they are. They're very tricky. They're intended to be tricky. So just remember to read it, but then reread it to really, really find what are they asking me. And again, don't be concerned if it feels like there were irrelevant pieces of information in there. You're right, there are. Not all of them, just some of them. And so finally, tip number 4, which is to read the answers very carefully. So yet again, it's a little tricky on these PMI exams because even PMI will say, choose the best answer. And so what's key here on taking these exams is that they may all look good and they may all look correct. And you're not wrong. They might all be good answers. So the key is to remember what PMI says, which is choose the best answer. So if 4 of these answers look great, which one looks the best? Keep that in mind as you go through. And also, one of my ways of working through these answers is I start at the bottom answer and work my way up. So I start with like D and then C and then B and then A. For me, I find, especially on these PMI exams, every answer is looking better than the next, and we all know that that can't be right. So if I start at the bottom and then I read up, that sort of goes away from me. Then I can really see all the answers and choose the one that's best. So if you feel like me, like each one's just getting better than the next, try starting with the bottom answer and then working your way up. So those are my 4 tips for you. Know the material, know how to apply the material, read the question very carefully, and read the answers very carefully. So thanks so much for joining my course, and happy exam taking.